Hello and welcome to the Underhive. We are back with some more How to Command the Death Guard. And today we are looking at a competitive list. Mr. Richard Hill, who appears to appear here a few times, so well, two at least in the last few months. So clearly a top competitive player with at least the Death Guard. He's run actually quite a spicy list here, so I thought it would bear going through. Few of you have asked for this in the past, so thank you very much for that. I'm more than happy to oblige. So let's take a look at this first place winning list from the Gonghammer GT on the 15th of July. So it does appear that some of the tournaments are not yet running the new Chaos Space Marine Codex. And I do think Emperor's Children have a good matchup into Death Guard, even despite the -1 toughness shenanigans. So I think we probably will see more chaos lists in the future. There's not a lot of chaos all said and done. Black Legion, only the one there. Emperor's Children only had one as well, and it didn't look like it was using the new codex. So I think that'll be a bit of a challenge for Death Guard once the Chaos Space Marine Codex comes in, but feel free to disagree with that. I'm not sure it'd have been difficult for this list though. Let's dive in and take a look at what Richard brought. So the list itself here, it's noted as a spearhead detachment, but it's got 6 fast attack slots. So I think there's been a little bit of lost in translation here. I'm sure Richard, when he ran the list, it was all correct and noted and as it should be, but it's just not correct on here. There's also no Plague Company listed for this detachment, which it would have had to have one. It doesn't look like they're bringing any of the relics or warlord traits limited to any given Plague Company, but he would have had to have picked one for the use of the stratagem at the very least. So it may well have been inexorable for the -2 to be charged for a given unit. That can be very effective. But he has got a lot of units that don't really mind being charged. But it is noted on the Plague Company for the Supreme Commander detachment that the Plague Company is inexorable. Mortarion himself doesn't need a Plague Company. So I think, again, this is probably misnoted and that they're actually the inexorable in this detachment. So not 100% clear on that, but I think that was probably how it was being played. So we have got in the Supreme Command, we might as well start with the Warlord Mortarion. So he's got his 3 Warlord traits. He's got his 5 upfill, no pain from Revolting the Resilient. His 3-inch deny auras except psychic powers from Living Plague. And his 6-inch reroll wound rolls on plague weapons that are in melee or shooting a target within 12 inches. His spells there, he's got Miasma of Pestilence. There's a lot of good targets in this list for -1 to hit, but I think you'll probably be taking it on Mortarion a lot of the time. It is just a Death Guard unit, so he can cast it on himself. He's got his his Chapter Master rerolls, basically, which, again, there are other targets, but I think a lot of the time he's probably taking his full rerolls to hit for himself. And he has Gift of Contagion. So that's -1 strength. Could be useful if he does get tangled up with quite an elite squad in melee. If you roll above an 8, it is -1 strength and -1 attack. So that's very good into like a 10-man squad of something dangerous, like say, like Vanguard vets with hammers or something like that. Because of his 4-up invuln and his -1 damage, hammers are not a bad pick against Mortarion. They're by no means the best thing, but they are fine. Yeah, something like Vanguard vets with hammers, -1 attack on them would be something you would be happy with. Nothing else really there to speak of. He's got Curse of the Leper as well for some direct damage. Because he's got his permanent 9-inch area warlord trait, 9-inch contagion range, the Curse of the Leper is quite likely to be on a target that's -1 toughness because he is very quick and can fly, so he can probably get where he wants to as long as they're not miles away. Now, his other warlord trait we're not actually going to see here because it was picked in the fight. I think Gloaming Blow is probably what was picked. It's arguably the single best for Mortarion to take. I also really like Ferric Blight, but that requires the models to be inexorable. There's a good chance that this play company here was inexorable, so he might be dishing out additional AP. Very nice on the Flesh Mowers here that we've got. Also quite nice on the Demon Prince. Can be nice on the Mephitic Blight Haulers as well. So it's possible he went with inexorable in some of the games. You do pick it at the start of the game. So he could have just picked it when the additional AP is going to be relevant and maybe had Gloaming Bloat for you can't reroll hits and wounds within Contagion range of Mortarion, and you can't set to defend or overwatch within Contagion range for where that was relevant. Something like Tau, I think you'd really want Gloaming Bloat. Something because you know if you want to make a 6-inch charge with Mortarion, you don't want to be getting overwatched by them. Whereas against like Marines, you would probably take Ferric Blight if they've not got a lot of reroll spam in the army. There's also 190 points here of reinforcements from Chaos Demons, so that is almost certainly some Nurglings and some Plague Bearers. The Nurglings have an ability that nothing else really that you can bring does, which is that they can deploy out in the middle of the field, at least 9-inch away from the enemy deployment zone, and at least 9-inch away from any enemy models. As it goes, I actually was inspired to chuck Mortarion in the 3 Dreadclaw drop pod list, and it did very well. A lot better than the Plague Burst Crawlers. I think it might even be worth chucking some Nurglings in, just so that you can deploy them out there and go, you're not denying me striking into the middle of the board. I can strike in next to my Nurglings now. So I might well even consider chucking a few Nurglings in there if I can. But we'll see about that. The list is pretty tight now, Mortarion squeezed in. But in terms of this, we've got 190 points for reinforcements there, which could be 4 squads of Nurglings for 100 points. So that's 4 times 4 little Nurgling blobs. And then the Plague Bearers are 9 points each, so you could get a squad of 10 in there for another 90. So you could have a squad of Nurglings and a squad of Plague Bearers. Plague Bearers are kind of slow, only a 5-inch move there, so realistically, they will probably have an Instrument of Chaos. For every 10 models, one could have an Instrument of Chaos for 10 points. That does give them +1 to advance and charge. Which could be really relevant. So they may well spend the extra points for that. They could then take a Demonic Icon as well for another 15, which is when you roll a 1 for morale, reality blinks and the Demonic Horde is bolstered. No models flee and D6 slain Plague Bearers are added to the unit. So failing morale actually benefits you rather than takes away. So that would spend an additional 25 of the points on a 10-man squad and mean you'd only have 3 Nurgling swarms. That could have been the way it was being played. It's probably either 4 squads of Nurglings and a squad of 10 Plague Bearers, or 3 squads of Nurglings with the 10 Plague Bearers with upgrades. So I like that there. I think that does a lot of stuff, and obviously Mortarion's fun to have. For the rest of the detachment, we've got an Outrider, not a Spearhead, as it lists here. We've got the Demon Prince with wings and the Hellforged Sword. So he's hitting at Strength 8, AP -3, damage 3. He's got a 2-up save from the Suppurating Plate there. Not the relic I'd take, to be honest, but I can understand it. Having a 2-up save is really nice. He's got that 5-up invul, but sometimes it does feel a little bit weak when you lose into like bolter shots and 1s and 2s on the save, which normally would go through for him, can feel bad. So I understand having the Suppurating Plate. He can deal out some mortal wounds. If he gets attacked by a unit and it does deal some damage, then it can retaliate a mortal wound. I think it's there more for the 2-up save though than the mortal wound output. If you wanted it for the mortal wounds, you just take the Plague Skull of Glithilla. That for me is an auto take, and I probably would run the Plague Skull of Glithilla. Not that I'm saying I think that I can write this list better. I just think if I'm being honest with myself, I would have taken that rather than Suppurating Plate. But that's not to say I think this is wrong. There is a Taliman in the list. I imagine the Taliman's just sitting at the back. There's not an awful lot of core here for him to buff. In fact, there's no core here for him to buff. So he's not going to be doing his buff. I think he's just here for the CP. Got 3 Fetid Bloat Drones. Moving 10-inch with fly. By turn 2, they're going to be out into the board most likely able to make a charge. They're going to be spreading that contagion range for the long range shooting that's in the rest of the list. And then obviously they're going to make that charge, strength 6, AP 2, damage 2. They're going to eat through infantry regardless of what that infantry is most of the time. You've got a total of 36 attacks if they're all in combat that turn. So they're really, really going to eat through the opponent's infantry and stop them actually playing the game, trying to score points, trying to do actions, etc. The Mephitic Blight Haulers, so we've got 2 squads of 2 and 1 squad of 1. So we've got a total of 5. So 2 of them are going to have to stick as a pair. They can't divide up, but then 1 of them can free roam wherever it likes. You've got 10 melter shots there at 24 inch. With a 10-inch move on them, it's not unrealistic to get them in range of something on turn 1. You're not necessarily going to get them in range of what you wanted to shoot, but nothing likes being hit with melters, and 10 melter shots, you're going to expect to do some damage here or there. Once you can see some enemy vehicles, the Mephitic Blight Haulers are definitely there to put those melter shots into vehicles and monsters. It's not so much that the rest of the list can't deal with them, you just don't want them shooting at Mortarion, or perhaps charging Mortarion if they're the kind of monster that really can put a number on him. You've also got 5 crack missiles at 48-inch range, so something like a long strike, if it has popped out to try and get as much line of sight as it wants. He doesn't like 5 crack missiles. Nobody likes 5 crack missiles, particularly against something like Tau or Eldar, like long range, like Void Weavers or whatever they're called. I think that's Harlequins, but Eldar shenanigans. They have long range weapons. They all don't have armor of contempt, so AP2 is going to get some work done, and it is D6 damage with that long range. So again, strength 8 is going to be enough against a lot of those targets, not necessarily all of them, but a lot of those Xenos type vehicles, besides orcs. The crack missiles are going to look really good into. Again, something like orcs, the flesh mower is really, really nice into all the infantry being strength 6 and reducing their toughness. Not that that really affects a breakpoint. The Mephitic Blight Haulers are going to be really, really good into all of their transports. Even with Ramshackle, there's a lot of D6 damage here, so even something like a wide orcs list, you've got some game against there. And then we've got Plague Burst Crawler, 2 entropy cannons, so they're just going to try and snipe a big vehicle. They are swingy, it's 3s to hit until it starts getting wounded. Again, sometimes you roll 2 1s or a 1 and a 2 and it sucks, but if you get both hits through, it is strength 8, it is 4 AP, and it is between 4 and 6 damage. So if they do sneak through in the first couple of turns, they really do pay for themselves then and there. It's always a shame when the entropy cannon doesn't work until turn 3 or 4. That is a risk you're taking, but I think for 145 points, it's probably here because Richard didn't want to run anything else for 145 points, didn't want to include any more infantry, didn't see the value, and a Plague Burst, whilst it's swingy, it can certainly get the job done. If you roll well on the number of shots on the mortar and you're taking out an out of line of sight unit, I will quite often leave a unit on the back objective that's kind of a throwaway unit, just hidden. I don't want you taking this off me, and you're going to have to strike something in and get a charge, or come right up the board and get a charge to actually deal with them. Or shoot them, I suppose, but you're going to have to get an angle on them. The Plague Burst Crawler there in support of that is nice to have. It creates that larger screen, and it can support that. If it does get charged, it can at least fire its entropy cannons and heavy slugger. So it can do a little bit, but it doesn't really want to be in melee. Ultimately, having that unit at the back be supported by something heavy like this does dissuade like a quick vehicle coming up, because it doesn't necessarily want to end up toe-to-toe with the Plague Burst, only for the benefit of trying to chip away models that are on your backfield objective. In the reverse, the Plague Burst Crawler doesn't need to come particularly far out of your deployment zone to be able to out of line of sight your opponent's home objective holder. And if we're talking a squad of 5, 2 wound infantry, or maybe even 1 wound infantry, it's not unreasonable to chew through enough of them to make a difference. Particularly over 2 or 3 turns, you could wipe that squad out with the mortar. Even better if they're not in cover, because you will at least have 1 AP then. But again, bear in mind that is going to be hitting on 4s if it's out of line of sight, even with full health. So it's by no means consistent, but it is something that you might want to do with this list, because all of the other shooting really is coming from the Mephitic Blight Haulers, and they're going to need line of sight for their stuff. On some of the WTC maps, the back objective is just hidden. So having the option to at least take it out with a Plague Burst Crawler rather than having to really try and yeet something up is probably a reason it's there. Overall, I really, really like the list. It's not something I would have ever come down on. And I imagine that when this was revealed to the opponent, right, this is what Richard's bringing, it was probably like, oh, right, I'm up against this Death Guard. And that's a very similar effect to what I've had with the 3 drop pod list that I've been running. I think it does a very similar thing in that it gets melee threats up the board really quick, but it's just because they're quick and can fly. It also gets some key shooting threats up the board really quick as well, which is a clear difference to the drop pod list, which is pretty much all Death Shroud. But overall, I really like it, and obviously it did well. I will say, I think looking at it, this is not the kind of list anyone will pilot to a win. You know, when NIDs were top tier, you know, before they had all the point cuts recently, there were lists that it's like, this just plays a game of 40k, you move, you shoot with your shooting, you charge with your fighters, you fight, you carry on, you claim some objectives, you do it again. And arguably anybody could have won with that list because the decisions they need to make aren't that dissimilar to any decision you might make in any game. With this, I think there's a lot of weird decision points depending what you're coming up against. I think you play the list very, very differently into a melee army than you do into a shooting army. I think you end up having to be far more cagey with a shooting army than you would expect from the list if you saw it go up against a melee army, in which you would be hyper aggressive. And I think even if there's some amount of shooting in there, even if, let's say, they had 6 melter shots and some las cannons to shoot at Mortarion, I think you'd still be pushing him out to be that distraction carnifex if need be early in the game. Now, I could be wrong. I didn't see Richard play this, so I don't know how he played it. But I'd imagine that Mortarion is getting out there hyper quick because you have the Nurglings in the mid board, you know your opponent isn't there, and you know, make use of what obscuring you can for turn 1 if you go in second. But besides that, he's coming out and he's just going to weather the fire, because when he gets into something, he will deal with it, and you have the counter punch. So as soon as you can get that unit in range of these Blight Haulers, or if you can get it in range of the Flesh Mowers, they're offline, if not dead. So yeah, I think it's one of those lists that is winning because Richard piloted it, or you know, any good player piloted it, not because this is inherently broken. There are, of course, some stratagems you can use defensively with Blight Haulers. You've got a 6-inch Heroic Intervene with Bloat Drones, probably inexorable, so probably denying the opponent's charge. Sort of like leave the Bloat Drones like 16 inches away, leave them on a 10-inch charge, maybe with rerolls or whatever, but leave them on a 10-inch charge, add 2 to it, make the charge really unlikely, then you move up 10 and make a 2-inch charge and absolutely crush him. So I think there's a bit of back and forth with the charges. Possibly you would see a Disgusting Force every now and again. That could be the reason the Plague Burst is there, just to something to use the Disgusting Force on. 3 damage when it is in line of sight is very nice. And if the opponent is very heavy on units, like the amount of units, then the Plague Burst Crawler with Disgusting Force can dish out a nice number of mortal wounds. And given that Mortarion's going to be out there dishing some mortal wounds with his spells as well, and I take it the Death Guard Demon Prince has a spell, but they've not listed it here. So maybe they would be going for like a psychic secondary and just like doing like what's it called? The psychic investigation or whatever it's called. I forgot what it's called now. I never take that one. But yeah, maybe he's looking to do a psychic action with the Demon Prince rather than anything else. He has got the main spells you'd want on Mortarion, but I think I'd probably take a Putrescent Vitality on the Demon Prince here. Admittedly, Yeah, saying that, admittedly, he's on his only infantry is the Tallyman, so yeah, you probably don't want a putrescent vitality. Yeah, I mean, it's not listed, which could be a translation mistake again, in terms of getting it over to Goonhammer, but he would have a spell. Maybe he's just going to be doing smites. Maybe he's going to be doing psychic actions, but he should have one. And I think if I was putting one in, probably be another Curse of the Leper on the off chance that Mortarion goes, no, I can do a smite and I'll let you do a Curse of the Leper, or vice versa. Because not much of the others is going to get much value here, I don't think. And you're not going to need Gift of Plagues. With Mortarion in there, he's probably going to outrun the Demon Prince or be in the same place that he is anyway. So you don't need Gift of Plagues because I don't think you can use it on Mortarion anyway. So yeah, overall, I think a spicy list, a good list, and I think to have come first with it, for me, that says a lot about the quality of Richard's play, because that list to me doesn't look like this beats all comers. It looks like it does really punish elite forces because it's hyper elite itself. There's not a lot in the way of like chaff punishment. Obviously, Mortarion chews through whatever he fights, but something like Guard that can afford to throw a few units at you each turn and can basilisk the hell out of Mortarion regardless of where you put him, I think that could look dangerous. Now, obviously, Guard are not mega strong or anything, but their out of line of sight shooting and their ability to screen really well isn't anything to be sniffed at for this list, given how hyper elite it is. And something like Tau with like Devilfish and Breaches, I've had used to great effect with me in this drop pod list. So again, I wouldn't be surprised if something like that occurred. There's no real striking in here other than trying to bring in the Plague Bearers at some point. But besides that, it's just a case of the breaches will be a roadblock. The Devilfish can still move around and shoot you. The Tau have some great profiles. If they have built their list to target Marines, or at least like reasonable AP and Armor of Contempt, then I think things like their Plasmas have a really nice profile. They don't have to go with extra damage on them or anything. Because -1 damage probably mitigates that most of the time. But something like a long strike or a hammerhead really answers the question you bring in. The mega AP is going through, no invuln on it, big damage. It gets around Mortarion's -1 damage and his Feel No Pains to an extent, because you're not realistically going to make them all. So yeah, I think it does get beat by Tau with the wrong player pilot in it. But I haven't looked through every match Richard played, and I'd imagine he played against Tau at least once, given that he got to first place. So it's not to say it'll do badly against Tau in the hands of the right player with the right dice at the right time, but I think it could do badly against Tau with the wrong pilot. Well, that's everything for me. Bit of a ramble. Hope you enjoyed that. I know some of you are enjoying my my analysis, so hopefully the same for that one. Let me know what you think. We can always go through some of these most recent ones as well. We've got another few almost podium results from July. I wouldn't want to go back any further than July, but we've got a third and a few fourth places there. So we could definitely have a look through those as well if you're interested. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time in the Underhive.